What's up, and welcome to Nowstalgia Pod, breaking down the best of 2021 TV today. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined as always by my trusty co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, you ready to count down?
I am big math guy counting.
Yeah, we're pro math on the pod, that's for sure. Although I'm not very good at it. Um,
We
but
notably
Dave,
don't score anything we review.
yeah, uh, good point. Uh, uh, we're gonna be talking about the best TV that we watched this year, and you know, as I was thinking about this year, and reviewing some other lists just to make sure I was crossing my T's and dotting my I's. The main takeaway I had is just there's a lot of TV, and it's all over the place, and it's hard to get to all of it. Always impressed with people like Alan Sepinwall, or what's the other guy for Rolling Stone? Is it Daniel Feinberg or something like
He's
that?
at a Hollywood Reporter.
Oh, okay. He's a Hollywood Reporter now.
Yeah.
They just get to so much. And they watch so much stuff. And I think that's one of the things that, as we go through our list, we'll probably mention near the end, that there's some notable shows that we just have not gotten to for various reasons, whether it's time constraints, whether it's not having access to the platforms. We're only able to afford so much because you need to subscribe so we can get sponsored and pay for all the subscription services, bring you all the content. What were some of the takeaways for you just in making this list, and general thoughts about the year in TV?
Yeah, I think this year you finally had television show television shows come out that were made during the pandemic.
Mm.
All the holdover shows from 2019, they they came out because the television pipeline was about dried up. TV was definitely more affected by the pandemic than movies, because movies comfortably just delayed more things and all that, right? So you started to get new things that were made during the pandemic or finished during the pandemic after not being able to complete production before everything shut down. And I think it was still a pretty good year. There's a lot of HBO on my list. So, in a sense, the status quo continues. The best in the business continue to be the best.
Yeah, no, definitely a great year. I mean, some notable shows that are typically on best of lists, didn't have seasons this year. And I think the as I think about this year and as we anticipate next year, the anticipation of some new shows coming out that may be at the top of these lists next year, hopefully, is kind of sitting with me. So uh, I agree. I had a lot of HBO on this list, but kind of all over. I had a couple of Netflix, a couple of Disney, couple. I had an Amazon show on here, Dave,
Yeah.
which, and I had an FX show. So like I said, TV's all over the place, man. Um, Good stuff, though. I agree. I think it's still a solid year, and I also liked that my list was varied between shows that premiered and shows that are like mainstays for me at this point, atop the year in TV. It feels like there's an influx of just good stuff all the time. With that said, any other general thoughts on the year in TV before we move on?
No, I mean, I feel like there's not like anything super monumental. Yeah, there were some huge Flashpoint shows. We'll be getting to some of them soon, but like you had CBS All Access rebrands as Paramount
Mm.
Plus, and yet you can't watch Yellowstone on Paramount Plus because the Paramount Network show Yellowstone, the rights were sold to was it Peacock before
Yep.
Paramount Plus was ready for prime time. Really funny stuff, but Yellowstone kind of carrying a cable on its back, and by all accounts, it's still as good as it's been. So that's cool to see. Shout out Taylor Sheridan, one of the hardest working men in Hollywood. But yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of Netflix. It's a lot of HBO, right? At the top, and your other players are still hanging around. FX still has a really high batting average, just a lower volume. Amazon, well, it's Amazon. I think when people know how up and down they can be with original content, but I think overall, like, nothing's too surprising, right? Like, there's a yeah, there were some Peacock shows people liked. I guess Apple had more of a showing than they've had recently, with a continuation of Ted Lasso, and then something like For All Mankind leveling up with season two. But I think overall it was kind of a status quo year. It was hard to see anything like major being changed. And I guess, down the line, we're seeing the FX on Hulu branding going away. FX is going to be like a Hulu hub now. So maybe things will become more stratified in 2022. But yeah, I don't think there was a whole lot of like major change, right? Like the MGM acquisition by Amazon hasn't come to fruition yet, and also was probably going to be more of a movie thing in the short term anyway. So like there hasn't been anything too crazy. I feel like.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything too crazy, but I do think there's maybe two notable themes or stories that probably are worth talking about, and I think we'll touch on some of these on the list potentially. And that's the continued search for the next Game of Thrones, and every network kind of trying to find their thing. We reviewed quite a few shows this year that are very much in that fantasy realm. Things like Formation or The Wheel of Time come to mind.
Foundation.
Foundation, girls get information for Foundation. Uh, those shows had varying levels of success and critical acclaim. I think I didn't necessarily jive with either one of them, or any of those type of shows. But like I said, I'm very much looking forward to House of Dragons coming out next year. So just getting more Game of Thrones, and whenever we get the Amazon Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
excited for
Fall
that.
22.
So potentially that search will end, which will be nice. But a lot of shows going for very big shows, and then I think also a very big property breaking into the TV world in a big way. Marvel,
Right. Of
consistently putting
course.
out shows and keeping the conversation about it ever present. And that's I think that point is exacerbated as Hawkeye is on the penultimate episode of their season. So just any general thoughts around those two themes that come to mind for you?
Yeah, on one hand, seeing them all the Marvel stuff happen this year and going so big, right? You had four live action series plus an animated series,
Mhm.
and that volume is going to continue. Pandemic delays affected the release of some of those shows, release order of some of those shows. But either way, like uh, Marvel is fully in the TV game, and if there was ever a point of Marvel saturation, it's because of the movies with the TV, right? Four movies and four shows is a big ask, and on the other hand, it wasn't like a brand new thing to me because I feel like we got used to this sort of thing from Disney Plus because of The Mandalorian being out for two seasons. So, kind of getting up for one of these big IP shows on Disney Plus wasn't super new to me, honestly.
Definitely not super new. I do agree that there's this oversaturation of Marvel. It was already kind of happening before the TV shows, and just even more saturated now. Although I will say I'm pretty hyped to talk about our year-end list and see if any Marvel movies make our year-end movie list in the future. But I think it's time we kind of just start diving into what stood out to us this year. Dave, I'll start with number 10 because I don't know if I have a ton to say about mine. Just a continued delight, and that's Ted Lasso. Coming from uh, Jason Sudeikis, Bill Lawrence, Brendan Hunt. Those three made one of the most surprising television shows of last year, one of the most feel good television shows of last year, and I think that really continues, even if it's not as consistent of a season as season one. I think season two had some real great moments. I think it had some real great character growth and development. A lot of focus on mental health this season, specifically Ted's mental health, but also Beard gets an episode where they're kind of exploring his mental health. You get a little bit between Roy Kent and Keeley about what's going on between them. Nick Muhammad, who probably had the biggest character arc as Nate this season, and where his character ends up around and what's going on for him. it just feels like a show that not only leaves you with a really good feeling most weeks, but it also is really fleshing out and coloring in the edges really well. And I appreciate that to um, maintain the feel good nature of the show. I think is the main thing because that's what people keep coming back for. It's not the funniest show, it's a comedy, but I don't necessarily find it to be like super funny. I just kind
No.
of come for the good vibes, and I enjoy the character growth as well. So Ted Lasso, my number 10. Any thoughts on Ted Lasso
Yeah, I would
for you?
just say I think season 2 is a lot better than season 1 just because you have your feel good nature, you have the characters you've come to know, but now there's actual conflict. There's actual tension on the show. Season 1 had no interest in maintaining anything like that, right?
True.
As anyone who was any kind of a villain on the show becomes an ally or a friend by
Mhm.
the end of that season or the beginning of season 2. But due to stuff in Ted's personal life, relationship issues, Nate's turn. Now there's some actual like conflict and road being laid. I think for the future of the show to have I think a deeper dramatic intent while still kind of being your fun dad jokey, Ted Lasso that you
Yeah.
come to know. So yeah, I like this season a lot more than the first one, which I was kind of lukewarm on.
But Ted Lasso, my number 10. Dave, what do you for 10?
My number 10 is Sex Education, Season 3, the British comedy on Netflix from Laurie Nunn. And the reason I have Season 3 here is nice return to form for the series after taking a dip, a small dip, but taking a dip from Season 1 to Season 2. But at this point, 3 seasons in, Sex Education has just done the work, put in the time to make you invested in these characters, in these relationships, so that when the inevitable teenage melodrama happens, your love triangles, your conflicts, however mundane, however stupid, and everything in between, you care because you like all these people. You know who these people are by now. And I think the show just has a tremendous ensemble that it really knows how to use. And, along the way, I think in season 3, Mimi Keem's Ruby was a real revelation, became one of the most popular characters on the show in season 3. But overall, you just have so many characters you like. And even if maybe some of them had smaller arcs in season 3 and they did in past seasons, everyone still seems to have some kind of forward momentum while the show tackles a litany of uh, teenage and you know uh, sex positive themes. Like it's kind of a multi-layered show in terms of its messaging, but at the end of the day, you just care about all these characters by now. So I found it really satisfying.
Yeah, Sex Education was a show that I really considered for the back end of my list as well, and I really liked the presence of Jemima Kirk on this season as
Mm.
like kind of the villain, as Hope Haddon, who was the new headmaster. Um, and they explore a lot of different themes on this show, like you said. I mean, they brought in a character this season who is you know non-binary, and uh, I thought that was a really interesting aspect on uh, Robin Holiday as Layla. Sorry, I was looking for the character's name here in my notes, and I think just the show is able to, like you said, sustain its level of uh, excellence by the characters that it's built up, and then bring more into the fold. I mean, the way that Adam, played by Connor Swindless, has come around as a character from being villain of season 1 to now probably being one of the most beloved, sympathized with characters. I thought it's
Yeah.
absolutely phenomenal and true testament. To, even his dad, Michael, this season, played by Alistair Petrie, um, kind of getting that moment to stand up to his brother and like fleshing out that character. He goes from being just such a dick in the eyes of the viewer to being a fully realized and understood and sympathetic person. It's really impressive. The show just
Yeah.
is humming all the time. So good shit for sure. Dave, I like to cheat on these lists, right? And I did it again because I mentioned Marvel, and I couldn't pick just one Marvel show to be on this list, but I didn't really
Wow.
want to give them two spots. So I'm giving my number nine shows of the year is Loki and WandaVision.
You're letting them oversaturate your list.
Yeah, I think I think that there were definitely things that were better. This is why it's only number nine on my list. But I really just found myself admiring certain aspects of these TV shows. WandaVision, I think the episode to episode different homage to a certain sitcom style, and the way that developed, and the way that they built the episodes around that, I thought was just really clever and well done, and fun and interesting. Really sucked me and made me want to watch the show when it dropped every week. And then building out uh characters like Catherine Hahn, who I just did
Mm.
not expect to be just fully invested in Catherine Hahn as part of the Marvel the EU, and here I
So
am.
you're saying you're excited for the Agatha Harkness spinoff that's coming? Because I don't
I
know
don't know,
about
I don't
you.
know
I don't know about me. That's a little superfluous in my opinion.
I don't know if I'm super excited about it, but I enjoyed seeing, and I hope that whatever Wanda's journey from here is, that we see Agatha in some way. And I don't ever think Catherine Hahn's a bad thing. She just needs more work. But I also found it to be pretty moving at times. I think the line that gets a lot of credit is like, "What is grief if not love?" Like persevering.
Mm.
Um, which was actually echoed recently in an interview that Andrew Garfield did, which I thought was interesting. Check that out. I think it was with Jimmy Kimmel, maybe James Corden, one of those late night hosts. But WandaVision, I thought, really set the stage and was really, you know, uh, an interesting foray into TV. Unexpected that this would go first, and followed up by Winter Soldier, which was not very good. But then we got Loki, which really, I think, took the step that WandaVision didn't totally allow itself to, which was allowing Marvel to just kind of lean into the weirdness. And Loki certainly did that. I think back to the episode where Loki has to team up with all the other Lokis from all the other timelines, and you get the alligator Loki and the child Loki, and himself as an old man, which that played by again.
Oh,
Man,
Richard E. Grant.
yes, D. Grant. Thank you. I want to say Christopher Plummer, but I knew obviously not Christopher Plummer. Um,
Rip.
yeah, major rip. But Loki also subverted all my expectations of what I kind of expect a Marvel show to be about. And not only this character who um, is trying to understand his place within the world and within these worlds, um, but understanding how to trust people, how to have actual connection with others, even if it's with just another version of himself. And we did get the big Marvel, CGI fuckfest in the penultimate episode, but then the final episode is two Lokis having a conversation with uh He Who Remains, played by Jonathan Majors, and it was absolutely surprising and unexpected and riveting. I am excited to see Jonathan Majors in the MCU moving forward. Um, but yeah, I just thought it was I thought it was really a pleasure to watch Loki week to week, and I'm excited that it got re up for second season. Um, did you consider Loki for your list? I know you liked it a little more than WandaVision.
No, I didn't consider either of them for my list. I think WandaVision's the more impressive television show because of how it weaves in homage to various television shows of the past, decade by decade. I think it just has more interesting themes and productions and stuff. However, the ending it fizzles out. Loki is more of a fun, like rip roaring show, start to finish, but its ending kind of gets in the way, I think, of its season because it becomes an MCU ending where it's like, oh, here you go, here's King the Conqueror's introduction.
Right.
Hawkeye as a season of TV, not much of a season of TV. It's more like, oh, here's the Kingpin, here's Florence Pugh coming back. It's like Marvel has a hard time, I think, juggling all its masters. Like Shang-Chi, I liked so much because it was very straightforward and about it itself. And WandaVision and Loki, I think, were at their best when they were just self-contained about the actual core plot, the core characters. So remains to be seen how Marvel handles this kind of storytelling in the future. Again, there's a lot more shows on the horizon, like Miss Marvel and She-Hulk. So we will see. But yeah, I think overall they had a successful first year, and people's mileage will vary with how much Marvel you're getting. But if you don't want to watch them, don't watch them, but they'll be coming.
And they'll have something important tied into them. So that's how they hook you if you're interested in the
Yeah.
movies. But Dave, what's your number 9 show of the year?
My number 9 is What We Do in the Shadows, season 3, FX on Hulu. Yeah, it's just a really funny show, man. People know these things. It's hard to keep reiterating that same point about What We Do in the Shadows, that it is so funny, but it's the truth, honestly. And the reason I have it on my list now, I haven't had it on the list in the past. It's not that it's any more or less funny than before, but I just like how the show has changed, the cast has grown, and with that growth, there's been some deeper dramatic side of things shown, such as Colin Robinson and what happens with his character throughout the course of the season. Nandor trying to be a human. There's a lot to like about the show, and I think overall it's really funny, which is at the end of the day a good baseline. But there was a bit of dramatic growth and character growth in season 3.
What We Do in the Shadows season 3 is actually my number 3 season of TV this year. Uh, it's just continuously a pleasure to watch, and they take it in such interesting directions. You know, when I think about the show, it's hard to just like pinpoint a singular moment that really stands out to me, just because there's so many good ones. Um, like Nandor this season when he decides he doesn't want to be a vampire anymore, and
Yes.
he goes to that retreat or that like cult basically. Just everything about that episode is hilarious to me. Matt Berry this season as Laszlo with his like obsession with the like fucking books, and he said just had some of the best like one liners throughout the whole season. Yeah, I think the one that you pointed out in our review was something like uh yeah, who would want to be straight for your entire life or something like that, like no
Mm.
vampires like that. I'm totally butchering the line obviously, but um just always a pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes from here. I thought it was actually like a real like emotional moment when um Colin Colin Robinson is like dying at the end of the season, and it's like, man, is the show really going to kill off Colin Robinson to bring it back with him as a baby, teamed up with Laszlo, obviously Nadja going off to England, and Nandor going to explore the world with Guillermo. I'm excited to see where it's going. It's the funniest show on television. There's not much more to say. So we can move forward. Your number 9, my number 3. Next up on my list, Dave, is a show that I expect you to have as well. Maybe not. But one of my favorite newest shows of the year, which is Hacks. I'm excited to see where Hacks goes in season 2. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
Hacks is
this
number
is
5 for me.
nice. I'll give you some more time to vamp here, but what I really just enjoyed about Hacks was not only was this a show that was somewhat of a surprise. I mean, you got Jean Smart, so you and she gets to be like the star again. So it's like okay, let's just see what she does as like the main cook in the kitchen. But I felt like Hacks found a lot of heart to it, and the interplay between Gene Smart and Hannah Einbinder, I thought was just really a pleasure to watch as it grew throughout the season. And then the way that Marcus, played by Carl Clemens Hopkins, his character grew, and you became more and more invested in um, what was going on for him in his personal life, and as this like other person who was trying to influence Deborah, as Ava's trying to push her career in a different direction. I just thought was um It's really interesting push and pull, and it had some great moments. I think about when Deborah decides to go and do a stand up set for the first time in a while, trying new stand up material, I should say, and she gets heckled by that guy and just totally breaks him down. I thought that moment just stands out as a wonderful one. But there's a lot of great moments from the season, so really enjoyed it. Why was it your number five show?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it there, but finally we're getting the Gene Smart star vehicle that people have wanted to see for so long. She's had such
Mhm.
a tremendous run on TV the last 9 years or so. So many standout roles, usually as a supporting character. But now she gets to be a lead. And that simple premise of being a pastor prime stand up comic that finds a newer or younger writer to help punch up her material. Such a dynamite, easy to understand premise. But because you have such great performances from Einbeiner and Smart, combined with really great writing that, again, as you said, highlights that heart, colors in these characters, makes the show just as dramatic as it is funny. Yeah, just a lovely surprise. I'm definitely looking forward to season two. And I think this is technically a HBO Max original, not an HBO original, but clearly the best HBO Max original thus far.
Absolutely. Um, all right, so that was my number eight. Hacks, your number five. What's up next for you, Dave?
My number eight is Scenes from a Marriage on
Ah,
HBO, the
didn't make my
miniseries.
list, but definitely considered.
Yes, the remake of the Igmar Bergman series from a few decades back, now featuring starring Jessica Chastain and Oscar Isaac. And, it's something that will beat you down at times with its material,
Mhm.
but the acting and the writing is just so strong. I just really couldn't ignore it. It's
Mm.
not that I love watching every moment of this show. When Chastain and Isaac are having some of those fights, especially in the beginning of the show, it is brutal, man, because the writing is so real, but so personal that watching them dress each other down is not pleasant to be in the company of. But again, I think the writing is so good that like it feels so transportive. And, Chastain giving a better performance on this show than I think she did in Eyes of Tammy Faye. Oscar Isaac giving a better performance in this than I think he did in the card counter. They both brought their A games to this series, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. 5 episodes. We really didn't need a second more because it is tough to sit with at times, but I was just really really pleased with the whole thing overall. And I guess the only weird thing about it was like the setup of every episode you watch Isaac or Chastain like walking to set in real life as you see uh, production assistants and directors and whatnot wearing masks because it's real life and they shot this during COVID. Other than that, which was just kind of a weird like fourth wall breaking touch. I don't know if it added too much. Other than that, I think the whole miniseries is doing exactly what it's setting out to do.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I definitely considered for my list. Just did not choose it because of everything that you said. It is not a pleasurable watch, and this is very in line with a lot, what my job is every day. So it
Mm,
was, I think, felt especially tough at times for me to watch. But yeah, that's just a testament to the performances because this felt almost too real at times and really, really brutal. I think about that episode where they finally have decided to get divorced. They're selling their house and they're in it for like the last time, and they're kind of like doing it like, oh, well, like, will they, won't they come back together thing, and like I think they end up having sex, and
mhm.
then everything just starts falling apart, and they end up like fighting, actually like physically like fighting each other in the doorway, and I just was like. My
Yeah.
stomach just like did backflips because not in a good way. I just was like, "Oh, this is really, really tough to watch. It's so brutal." But
Worst
like,
fight yet, and you'd already seen some bad ones.
yeah, and that not to step on the disappointment section of the pod, but I actually in thinking about it, really compared this show to Master of None season three that
Right.
came out this year because another show where it's about this relationship that was good and then fell apart and they went different directions. But I think this is just so much more it just stays with you, man. Like, and that's just a testament to the filmmaking and the acting, and yeah, I just really was blown away by this. So good, a really good choice for your list for sure. Um, moving on to number 8 for me. I guess that's right.
Eight,
Uh,
7. Which one is it?
this is no, sorry, number 7. This is I think you should leave season 2, which just kind of came out of nowhere for me. And man, I gotta say, I thought this was fucking awesome. If you go back and listen to our review, I binged the second season in a weekend. The episodes are quick, 15 minutes, sketch show on Netflix, filmed by Tim Robinson, who stars and writes almost everything. And at the time, I didn't think season 2 had lived up to season 1's consistency. But the thing about this show is that these sketches get stuck in your head and they are made to be memed. And I think the memeability of the show, it just adds to it. And man, I just there's so many skits from this season that I really really loved. Whether it was the hot dog sketch like you see behind, where they cancel lunch, so he has to bring a hot dog in his sleeve to the boardroom meeting, and he gets called out for it. Or when he wears the hat with the flaps, the safari hat with the flaps, and gets called out in a court proceeding and while they're reading texts about it, and he gets super embarrassed. It's just it always takes things to the next level. You never know where the show's going to go. It's predictable, and then it's just so rewatchable. Like because the skits are so quick and so funny, and there's so much to take away from it. You just find yourself going back for more and more, and it grows on you as you do. So, I think you should leave season 2. My number 7 show of the year. Dave, what's up next for you?
My number 7 is It's a Sin, the British
Nice.
production, Channel 4, aired in the US on HBO. Russell T Davies miniseries about a group of young men and some of their friends growing up in London just as the AIDS epidemic is beginning to begin. And all these men are most of these men are gay, and there's the camaraderie, the friendship that they have as they're finding their way through a world, a culture that is not accepting of them. And then once they realize a disease that is tearing apart them and people like them, that world, that culture is not doing what it should be doing to educate, let alone help prevent the tragedy that unfolds. And I think why I like the show so much, which also was a bit of a surprise beginning of the year. Russell T Davies, though, has a reputation as a creator, so I guess it wasn't a complete surprise. But what I really liked about it is it's really personal, and yet the show doesn't overstay its welcome. If anything, we could have used more time with these characters because I think the characters are all really finely written, and these relationships, these friendships, you're really invested in. And the show skips around in time as we advance through stages of the AIDS epidemic, and characters have various fates. But because the writing and the camaraderie is so well realized, I would have loved more time with these characters, but that's not what we get. It's short but sweet. And yes, there's some sadness, as you can imagine, about a show of this subject matter, no question. But I think overall, it's a really triumphant show, and starring Ali Alexander of years and years, becoming a multi hyphenate talent in his own right. So yeah, it was a surprise for me, but I really liked it.
This is a great one, and definitely I think a show I overlooked in making this list, and I think I actually am chalking that up to the fact it did come out so early in the year. I actually kind of forgot that this came out this year, but man, what a great choice! This was a pleasure to watch, and if you haven't checked it out on HBO, I think this got overlooked by a lot of people because it was dropped earlier in the year, and not necessarily something like you said that had a huge promotional side to it. Definitely check it out. I don't think you'll be disappointed at all. Dave, we're moving on my list, and you know, it almost kind of pains me to have this to have the Underground Railroad at number 6.
Mm.
But man, this might be the most like expertly made, I guess maybe second most expertly made season of television we're going to talk about on my list, because you have Barry Jenkins doing TV, dude, and everything about this show just feels so meticulously crafted and thought out, and it's really, really, really well done. I think it falls to number 6 on my list. I know I don't necessarily need to defend where it is, but I feel almost kind of like I have to, because it probably deserves to be up higher, but it's not always the most fun time. Similar to scenes
You
from a
think?
marriage. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think anyone that knows what the Underground Railroad is can guess the material, and it's not a fun hang a lot of the time. And for me, that takes it away. It takes away a little bit of my viewing enjoyment, but it definitely is just so well done and impressive. I'm really I wish Barry Jenkins would make more stuff, but I appreciate that he takes his time and puts so much thought into all of this. Where did it fall on your list?
Well, in terms of Barry Jenkins making some stuff, he's now paying the tax due on this show because he's making the fucking Lion King 2. Complete waste of his talents. But alas, let the man get paid. Yeah, the Underground Railroad is number 4 for me. And I mean, without question, the best Amazon Prime Video series to date. We like actually maybe second. It's definitely second after Fleabag. I keep forgetting about Fleabag because that's also BBC, I believe. But Amazon Prime original, you have like this and The Boys. It's not much of a uh,
Competition.
competition, right? But yeah, I have a number 4, and like you said, like I would call it the best made show because it's basically like just straight up filmmaking from an acclaimed filmmaker. So much so that Barry Jenkins has all his freaking collaborators here. Nicholas Bertel scoring it, James Laxton, cinematographer. All the people he works with on his movies worked with him on this anyway. And like you said, there is a lot of darkness. There is a lot of evil on the Underground Railroad. It does not shy away from the tragedy, from the horror that accompanies slavery at this time. And I think what makes a show so impressive is that it's so unflinching in its portrayal of that brutality, but it's also just as strong in its portrayal of tenderness in Black Love and the production side of things with its lighting and its close ups with the camera really knows how to showcase the different sides of its story and its themes. Think of those close ups on people's faces, often without any speech. And, when we're in Indiana, when we're in a relatively peaceful time in the show, um, the way things are colored in when we meet William Jackson Harper's character, right? Like the visual style, the visual storytelling of the Underground Railroad is so impressive, and you know, it's so transportive. Everything about this series, which makes sense again given the acclaimed nature of the Colson Whitehead book we're adapting here, the reputation of Barry Jenkins, as everyone knows at this point. And I guess if I had to like ding it for anything, it's just that like Cora isn't the best lead character I saw this year. She's intentionally more reserved, more focused on her fierce desire to obviously survive. But I think thematically, there's just so much to appreciate and admire about the show, even if there are plenty of aspects to it that I wouldn't begrudge anyone for not wanting to experience. I think also had one of the most fascinating characters of the year for me, honestly, which was Homer, the little young black boy that accompanied Joel Edgerton's Ridgeway character, our chief villain. I thought the kind of dichotomy between them, the slave catcher, and then the free black boy that accompanies the slave catcher, I thought was really fascinating, and there was more room on that bone for sure. But yeah, overall, I think Underground Railroad is just you don't watch shows like this like ever, honestly.
Oh,
Like it's one of a kind.
absolutely. Um, all right, so that was your number 4. So what was up next on your list before this?
So yeah, my number 5 is Hacks as well. Number 7, It's a Sin. So number 6 for me is The White Lotus. on HBO from
Ooh,
Mike White.
my number two. Let's
There we
talk
go.
about it.
Yeah. So something that also surprised me a bit in the summer this year because I wasn't super up on Mike White's uh, filmmaking, TV making career. I really knew him as the guy in School of Rock, honestly.
Mhm.
But Mike White's sensibilities as a creator, as a writer, are so great, and I was so happy to finally experience them because the White Lotus is just a seething, satire on wealth and privilege and so many things. But what I think most of all about it is the show really doesn't shy away from treating its core characters poorly because they deserve it, and it's impressive storytelling. And I just really like how everything kind of comes together with the White Lotus. No, very few, if any, of these character arcs are satisfying to watch. But that again, it's kind of the point because the bigger themes are what's most important.
Yeah, I think you summarized it really well. I was just so impressed with how much this show surprised me because it started off as it had a feeling like, oh, is there going to be like some surreal nature to this resort, or is there going to be something else going on? And it really, like you said, ended up just being this satirical look at wealth and privilege, and the way that people in power use these sorts of places and are less powerful or in different positions to uh, push themselves further, feel good about themselves. I'm thinking specifically about Jennifer Coolidge's character as I speak about that. But um, yeah, this show left me thinking um, way more than I ever expected to, and just reflecting on the message. And I feel like it very much could have been a show that just was kind of like, yeah, this is like some funny situations that these rich fucks get in, and there's some, some like surface level messages to this, and kind of just call it a day and say, wow, that was well made and it looked good and it was on a resort and blah blah. But no, it ended up being very deep and thoughtful, and I thought a show that reflected a side of um, capitalism and the upper class that I did not see coming. So was just totally blown away by it. I think we are getting a season two, right?
We are.
So
Yeah, and
um,
Jennifer Coolidge is returning for that second season as well.
yeah, and we had Nine Perfect Strangers come out shortly afterwards, and did not nearly live up to the hype. Not doing the exact same thing, but very similar premise. So
Right.
I think there's a lot to be said for the fact that Mike White pulled this off, and maybe other shows aren't able to do quite the same. So my number two, your number six, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. So up next on my list is actually something we didn't talk about on the pod this year, and I caught up on a little bit later. So yeah, my number five is the show we didn't talk about on the pod. I caught up on it late, which is Only Murders in the Building, the Hulu uh, breakout show of the year, I'd say.
Hmm.
Um, Definitely a surprise, but uh, when you have Martin, oh geez, I'm forgetting his name, Martin
Steve
Short,
Martin.
Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. You have to expect that there's going to be something good coming out this with those three at the helm, and I really loved this show because I think it towed the line of a couple different genres pretty well. First of all, I think it's a fairly decent like New York TV show, which I was kind of surprised at, but it really does take you around like Manhattan in different ways, or to different parts of it. I think they're located on like the Upper East Side, I believe. But you really like have this like look at like these rich people in New York City in this crazy apartment building. Um, but then it's also a murder mystery show, as well as a buddy show and like a show about like developing friendship, and just like a comedy. You get Steve Martin and Martin Short just kind of doing their thing, being themselves. And Martin Short certainly gets to be a little more flamboyant, and it really is him just playing himself, even if that's not the character's name. His name is Oliver on the show. And Steve Martin playing more of the straight man. Um, I was just really impressed with it. It kept me guessing the whole time. Made me laugh. I was on the edge of my seat for the finale. Um, and Honestly, Amy Ryan, who was played Jan, uh, who ends up being the killer. Sorry to spoil this for anybody. I thought, and you would know her as Holly from The Office. I thought it was like a real surprise, but like played her part really well. And yeah, I think if you haven't watched this, you should definitely tune in. And they are setting up season two, uh, really well. Cara Delevingne is joining the cast, so
Mm.
I don't know how I feel about the addition of her, but uh, I definitely think this was one of the surprises of the year for me, and I'm really looking forward to where the show goes next. So, only murders in the building. My number five. Dave, what's up next on your list?
So I'm up to number 3. Are you up to number 3?
Uh, I have my four and one left.
Okay. My number 3 is Mare of Easttown on HBO.
Nice. Did not make my list.
Yep. So I guess in a sense, Mare of Easttown isn't anything revelatory. There's a lot of familiar components to it. Mystery crime series, whodunit, dead girl, end of episode 1, familiar trope. But I really like it for its transportive nature to these uh, not very affluent suburbs in the Philadelphia area, and just the coloring in of our cast of characters, and we get just as invested in, if not more invested, in their emotional lives and their struggles and conflicts as we do in actually solving this crime. And because this crime and the unsolved nature of it are affecting this town in such a way, everything I think coalesces in a impactful way that when you actually find out who killed her, how they did it, it kind of is like besides the point at that point, because you've already progressed past that point, I think, in watching the series. And central to this, of course, is, I mean, Amy Nicholson, great supporting performance, wins the Emmy, but central performance, of course, Kate Winslet doing a prestige drama for HBO, and it lives up to the hype. She's really tremendous in this as a completely broken down character that is Mayor Sheehan. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's again, not always the funnest thing to watch either. It's a bit sullen, but I guess levity wise, you do have a tremendous Evan Peters performance, especially when he is drunk at that one point. But
Yeah.
yeah, overall, it's not a type of show you haven't seen before, but it's still, I think, really executed on well for that kind of show.
Yeah, I think you summarized why this could have made my list. It was definitely like 11 or 12. I was going back and forth on it. Um, just the way that it, I think, balanced the mystery of these killings and the whodunit with the interpersonal conflicts and the intrapersonal conflicts that the show explores. And yeah, I don't know if I have too much more to add. I just thought it was a real pleasure. I enjoyed every step of the ride. Um, do we know if we're getting a second season of this? I can't imagine Winslet wants to do
So
too much
they've
more.
left it open. Was it Winslet and Brad Inglesby, I believe, is the
Mhm.
creator. They've left it open, which I think is smart. Never get rid of your options. But I don't know if we necessarily need it. But you could definitely see them making another season. You know,
100%. Yeah, I could see that. I wouldn't mind seeing it, but I can't imagine Winslet wants to do TV too much. So we'll see. Dave, I think that brings us. I think we each have what, two left on our list at this point,
2 left. Yep.
and I think we probably have the same two. So my number four is Squid Game. Where'd this fall on your list?
Squid Game is my number 2. I wasn't sure if this was going to make your list.
Yeah, no, I in thinking about Squid Game, and when we make these lists, I try to balance out all the factors of it. Squid Game was a real moment, cultural moment of the year.
Yes.
Most watched show,
Recently too, end of the year.
yeah, most watched show on Netflix, from South Korea. Really, I think a really interesting look at um, classism and poverty and the capitalistic structures that kind of hold us all down and the desperation that it leads people to drives people to make decisions and do things that you wouldn't expect. Also, just a really fascinating concept, and some really well built-in plot devices, and it explores, I think, parts of humanity that a lot of shows don't explore to the same depth. Not only that, but incredibly stylized. How many Squid Game costumes did you see for Halloween this year? How many?
Right, of course.
If you see one frame from the show, you know what show it is, and I think there's just so much to like about it. Even if I didn't love it as much as a lot of people did, I still think this is worthy of being up on any list for this year. Why was it your number two?
Yeah, I was really blown away with the two factors of the show. On one hand, you have this really propulsive thriller that is really fun to engage with. You know, the twists and turns, the mystery, seeing who's going to survive, who isn't, getting attached to your central cast, not caring that there's some inherent plot armor with our main characters once you realize who
Right.
those main characters are. It's just really propulsive, good action, good drama. However, what takes the show to the next level is, of course, its political comment. It's scathing satire of modern day capitalism, presenting in a really convincing way that these people would rather risk their lives, almost certainly die, for the chance at generational wealth versus actually just try and survive in the real world. You know, it's really seething, and I think what really like hammers home that point and makes you really believe in these characters is that they take you out of the game for a whole episode right in the beginning of the series. And then you watch them. Nope, they decide a second time all to go back and play the game. I love that choice so much. And yeah, I agree. There's stuff you don't love, like Ji Hun as our lead protagonist. He's not the most likable guy, especially in the beginning of the show. He's just not the most competent person I've ever met. Has a gambling problem, not the best dad, etc. Right? But kind of an unlikely hero. I still kind of liked him in the end, and we do know that we're getting a second season from Hwang Dong Hyuk down the line. I think he wants to get a writer's room involved as well, which is really tantalizing to me to have more people contribute to the future of the Squid Game world. It's kind of wild to think that this show was completely conceived by just one person,
Yep.
but I think it really lands. If anything, the weakest aspect is how it's protracted ending. You know,
Yes.
like the propulsive nature of the thriller all lands, but then there's like an extra episode or episode and a half after the game is done, which isn't quite as strong as the game, as you can imagine. Uh, and I guess like
Yeah.
the VIPs and some of the people running the game, maybe not as satisfying as being with the people in the game. But I think the overall, there's just so much to like about it.
Yeah, probably the character that I've seen people liking the most is Sae-byeok,
Hmm.
who was a North Korean defector. And
Yes,
uh, she, Ho Yan Jung is just seems like she's going to be a rock star, someone that
yeah,
we're
she's already
talking
the
about a
most
lot moving
followed
forward.
actor from Korea, despite only acting in one thing. Yeah,
Insane.
she's internationally famous already.
um, but yeah, the show I think makes a lot of really great choices. Pitting Ji Hun up against Sang Woo at the very end,
Yeah,
and having them basically like fight each other to the death to see who wins, and uh, just really really gutting at times.
yeah. The marbles episode, of course.
The marbles episode was the one I was going to highlight. It's just like if you really want to go through the range of emotions and understand why this show was great, I think that the marbles episode is the highlight. So Squid Game, my number four, your number two. I think everybody's watched it, but if you haven't, I guess check it out.
Yeah.
And that leaves us both with the same number one. And if you follow the podcast at all, you knew that this was coming. Succession, our number
Surprise.
ones. Yeah, right. Dave, what is there to say about Succession that hasn't been said as to why it's great?
Yeah, so just as a reminder, we've reviewed almost all of these shows at length, season long reviews on the pod. And the Succession review, obviously, was very recent, given that season three just concluded a few weeks back. But Yeah, I mean, if you don't know, now you know that Succession season 3 just kind of keeps the run going. And what that means is that you just have these immense personal relationships continuing to be whittled down and refined and colored in and characterized. And you're just so invested and connected to these characters that even when the plot movement stops and starts, y- I couldn't care less because I'm just getting to be with more of these characters. However, the conclusion of the show with a masterful finale for season 3, the conclusion of the season, I think, really sets up the show for its next phase due to how Kendall's relationship with Roman and Shiv has changed and progressed. And Shiv and Roman's relationship with Logan has also progressed. And just where the show has left us from a plot perspective, where the show continues to leave us with from a writing perspective, from a characterizations perspective, it's just so masterclass at this point.
Yeah. Uh, I don't really have too much more to add beyond um, everybody on this season somehow leveled up their acting performances. And there are moments on this show that I'm probably not ever going to forget. You know, Jeremy Strong in that final episode when he's talking about, I'm blown in a million pieces. It's so fucking lonely. Like those line readings are just impeccable. You get Sarah Snook in that final scene, that final showdown with her dad, and then realizing that her husband flipped on her. Um, the look on her face, the way she played that scene so perfectly. Kieran Culkin, the MVP of the season. You could just do a highlight reel of just his non-verbal communication on the show and what that says, and let alone him delivering lines and being schmarmy and charming and cunning and devious the whole time. That's not even talking about probably the second MVP, which is McFadden. I mean, who just as Tom is just unbelievable in terms of his restraint and delivering lines with such subtlety, but so much heartbreak and pain behind them. Just so impressive. And we didn't even mention Brian Cox, bro. Like that's how deep this show runs. That like Brian Cox, the most established actor on the show, is sometimes like the fifth fiddle in terms of what we're talking about. So Succession is just fantastic. It's the best show on television. It's the only show out right now that I feel like rivals that like peak TV shows like Breaking Bad or Game of Thrones when it was at its heights, things like that. Like this is I want to watch this show when it drops because I don't want to miss a second of being with these characters. So Succession, both our number ones. Let's run through our 10 to ones, then we'll do some honorable mentions and some disappointments. You go first.
Yep. So number 10, Sex Education, season 3 from Netflix. Number 9, What We Do in the Shadows, season 3, FX. Number 8, Scenes from a Marriage, HBO. Number 7, It's a Sin, Channel 4 slash HBO. Number 6, The White Lotus, HBO. Number 5, Hacks, HBO Max. Number 4, The Underground Railroad, Amazon Prime Video. Number 3, Mare of Easttown, HBO. Number 2, Squid Game, Netflix. And number 1, Succession, once again, HBO.
Mhm. My 10 was Ted Lasso, uh, Apple Plus. Number 9 was Disney Plus's Loki and WandaVision. 8 Hacks HBO. 7 I Think You Should Leave season 2 on Netflix. 6 The Underground Railroad, Amazon Prime. Number 5 Only Murders in the Building, Hulu. Number 4 Squid Game. Number 3 What We Do in the Shadows, FX. 2 White Lotus on HBO, and Succession is my number 1 on HBO. Dave, give me a couple of honorable mentions for you that maybe we didn't talk about.
Yeah, so I had Ted Lasso in like my top 15. You talked about that. What just missed the cut for me was Star Wars Visions on Disney Plus, the anime anthology series. And I really loved it because I think it's just really effective use of an anthology series, especially in the non-canon variety, for big running IP. In this case, Star Wars episodes in particular, like the first one, the Duel, and the Ninth Jedi, and the Village Bride, just really awesome. Quick little hitters, but like some of the themes there with like mysticism and nature
Yeah.
and stuff. Just really great. Like just being in the Star Wars world and just from people that just really love it. So I would love to see a season two just because shit's just really fucking cool.
That was a really good one. Just want to rattle off a few for me that just missed the cut. That we didn't mention because a lot of the ones that were on yours, just that were on mine, just missed. Dave, season two, I thought really leveled up, and yeah, I did never expected the show to be something that like could break your heart at the same time, and it just is firing on all cylinders. Betty, I thought had another good season. Maybe not.
Unfortunately, canceled.
I know, which is really too bad, but really enjoyed being with those characters. And lastly, Halston, which
Mm.
inconsistent, but with some really like memorable moments. And I'm glad you and McGregor got some love for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me also just shout out lastly Lupin, Netflix
mm,
French show, specifically Lupin Part One, which I really
yeah, there you
liked
go.
as the crime caper mystery Omar Sy, so cunning and debonair and really fun. And then fortunately, we also got part two in this very year, so I had to judge the show by both parts. And part two just is a really convoluted, messy plot, and the momentum of season one, part one, is completely lost, so it didn't make my list. But part one, I thought was quite exceptional.
Any major disappointments for you this year?
Yeah, so I know we both share probably the biggest disappointment of the year for me, anyway. Master of None season three on
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yep.
Was it Moments in Love? Was the subtitle?
Hmm.
Notably, not featuring Aziz Ansari in a starring role. In this case, Lena Waithe, previously a supporting character in the first two seasons, now taking center stage alongside a new character, her partner, played by Naomi Aki. And Aziz obviously not as much in front of the camera as he used to be due to obviously what's gone on with his personal life and his career, but still involved in the creation of this show. But for me, I just had a hard time investing in it. I think it's kind of like dull to sit with at times. There's some really nice moments and nice scenes, but overall, it just didn't really come together for me, and it was a bit of a tonal disappointment. It just felt a little incongruous compared to the first two seasons, which obviously just have a lighter and more comedic element to them, even if there's plenty of serious things going on in those seasons as well.
Yeah, that was definitely one of mine. I think the only other disappointment was American Crime Story impeachment. Sorry, Ryan Murphy, which our thoughts on Ryan Murphy are well documented at this point. But I was really hoping that this would at least be something that could captivate me for a few episodes. I mean, uh, the impeachment of Bill Clinton and the Monica Lewinsky aspect of it all is something that I remember very vividly growing up, like hearing about, and probably one of the first like scandals that I can really remember.
Mm.
So I was really fascinated to see how it played out. And it just after one episode, we were like, we're out. Like, and I tried to tune in a few more times, especially like once Bill Clinton finally shows up, and man, I just couldn't do it. And just everything Ryan Murphy touches at this point just feels like it's not working for me. So I'm hoping he can get his groove back. Any
Yeah.
others you want to
Yeah, so I
highlight?
guess the last one for me, which is not much of a disappointment because I didn't have like any hype for it or anything, but Nine Perfect Strangers just wasn't
Yeah.
very good despite having a tremendous cast.
Hmm. I just want to also shout out because I don't think it will make either one of our movies of the year either. But Bo Burnham's Inside. I don't know what to do with that for end of year lists, but certainly something I
Yeah.
think that we should mention, right?
Stuff like Bo Burnham's Inside, I just keep on separate lists. I have like the Beatles Get Back, same thing. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's really three movies, but because it's a series of movies, I'm not putting it on my movie list. So it's just on its own thing. Yeah, that's how I treat stuff like that. I just wimp out and don't try.
Yeah, if that did count for TV for me, because I want to do like seasons, it probably would have fallen somewhere in the top five, six maybe. So maybe seven. But yeah, just a totally awesome, well made special. So, anyways, that's gonna do it for us. If you aren't already, hit that subscribe button on youtube.com/nostalgiapod to follow all of our content. We'll be doing end of year movies coming up, as well as one final episode of the year. Um, we're also going to be heading into the new year. And so that means you should be following our Nostalgia Best of 2022 Spotify playlist, which will be up soon, as well as check out everything that was good this year in music and our Best of the Music 2021 episode, as well as our Nostalgia Best of 2021 playlist on Spotify. And also follow us at Nostalgia Pod on Twitter. We'll catch you in 2022.